Well,
Hi, Michael Bryan.
well.
Hi. Yeah, you've
Hey,
been traveling. You're back in Connecticut.
I'm
You
back
were
in
you
the
started
home
in
studio.
Connecticut. You were in Massachusetts. You were doing all sorts of videos, and here you are back where you started.
Yes. Yeah. Funny how that
Welcome.
works. Thank you. Thanks
Welcome.
for holding down the fort while we were out there just having some fun with the local folks. We'll talk about Karen Reed in a second. Let's talk about what we've just seen. I'm not
Right.
so sure this is the best Q&A for the redirect by the prosecution to leave with this jury as they head off for the weekend. I'm not so sure that Paulie P expected to get the answer to that question. The question was your text about wanting to get some money from the defendant after the shooting or before the shooting? I think he wanted to hear before the shooting,
Right.
so
Right.
he said no. It was after. It was after.
After. Right.
So, and then I'm thinking, well, even if he had said it was before, then my mind would shift to, well, was that part of him creating this plan to get money, and it involved
Right.
this shooting and this injury? But I didn't have to go that far because it said it happened after the shooting.
Yeah, and that would make sense if it was before that because then he deleted the 4 texts too. That the whole plan, that the idea this was all planned out. Well, there was a lot of things that happened today, and our viewers have questions, I know, but
Oh
a lot of
yeah.
things happened while you were on the road. First of all, there was, I thought Joe Tacopina did a fabulous job. Now, apparently, there was some little bit of a ruckus in the courtroom. The judge really had to really step on Lewin, in my opinion. Because Lewin was constantly doing the objections, doing the speaking, and then constantly going back, and the judge was like, stop, and we've got that clip somewhere. We'll probably play it next week.
I have one. I have something. I don't know what it is, to be
That's the
honest with
one.
you.
I think
Is that the one? So bear with me
it.
for a second here. Let me see if I can find it. It's just
Okay,
the only one I had a
while you're
chance to
looking,
grab.
And
Okay,
then,
here we go. I got it.
Okay.
Here we go.
68 of the trial transcript.
Proper question with comments.
There's no question pending. Go ahead and read the
Page
question.
68, line 7 to line 14.
Stop it!
He's telling the jury.
Stop it! I don't want you to be
appropriate. You can't say it.
Mr. Lewin, stop it.
Page 68.
that's it.
You're going to be in timeout, Mr. Lewin. You're in timeout.
And when you heard, and I have to give the judge credit because he really had control of that courtroom when he was on the bench. He just says, "Like, stop it,"
But the thing is,
but there was one more thing I want to tell you before you
Okay.
go, okay? And then I'm going to let you roam free. There's a clip we're going to have to find over the weekend. And what it was starting that Joe's really getting under the skin of Relly, right? And at one point when they talked about the relationship with the lawyers and all, he said, "You Tacopino," and the judge said, "It is Mr. Tacopino to you. Mr. Tacopino doesn't call you Ephraim. He calls you Mr. Ephraim. You give him the same respect." And this is all in front of the jury.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of how the day really then started. Now, I wouldn't say off the rails, but it had a potential to go off the rails, and it got nasty at the end.
And I did hear that exchange. I don't know if anybody timestamped it, but if so, then maybe I can find it and we can pull it. But yeah, it was. That's not the kind of stuff you want to play out in front of the jury. I don't think anybody wants that to play out in front of the jury. Not the witness. Even the attorneys are not really comfortable with that kind of exchange. But with this guy, I mean, he is just out of control. And I'm not talking about Lewin this time. I'm talking about Relly. He plays this rope-a-dope kind of game where when he feels like anything he says is going to hurt him, he just doesn't know. I don't know.
I don't remember.
Yeah, he just plays dumb, which can work. And I mean, as I would tell clients, I don't know is a perfectly acceptable answer, but it needs to come genuinely, like right after a question is asked, not after you have fumbled to answer it 2 or 3 times and then you end up defaulting to I don't know. Then it just looks like you're hiding something.
Yeah,
and that happened a lot.
That was a lot in there. And then the well-respected attorney Ben Chu and Ms. Vasquez represent Relly. I don't know for how long.
I don't either, man.
In a civil case, but they sort of apparently Joe Tacopino had words with Vasquez, right? And then apparently, according to what's been reported, Ben Shu, who's certainly a gentleman, said, something about his ethics or his performance or something to him, 2 words, right? I didn't take it down because it wasn't on camera, but it's being reported, and you can all look it up. So that happened there, and I will remind you all that both Joe Tacopino and Ben Shu are friends of mine. We teach, the 3 of us at Harvard together, trial advocacy workshop. Now, the judge also didn't let really talk about extortion, but Joe ended on the thing that we had the exclusive on, Michael Bryant, I'm proud to say, the $30 million and $30 million cash, and he would just disappear to an island where the prosecution would not find him. And when confronted with whether or not he said that to Wally, I don't know how you spell Wally, whether it's Walle, whatever it is, but it sounded like Wally, right? He first of all, he says it didn't sound like him. And Joe said, you just listened to the tape for 3 seconds. He said, it doesn't sound like me.
Yeah.
And he said, actually, he says, how do you know it's 3 seconds? And Joe said, because I counted
1, 2, 3. Yeah.
3.
Yeah.
And
I'm
so
a genius. I counted to 3.
I assume there's 1 or 2 things that happen. Either Wally's going to testify, or the jury can listen to the tape and you can kind of hear whether it's him. They've had him on the stand now for 2 days. But $30 million twice, once for cash.
Yeah. And so I did put those 2 questions in our poll. So if you go to our community page at some point, one of them is basically, do you think extortion was committed? And then the second is, if you think it was, should Relly have been charged with a crime? So.
Well, that's the interesting issue here. The prosecution just, they took Relly's word, and yet there was you heard in the cross-examination, like the 4 times or so today, and I think you were on doing the interviews then, that he went through the police asking him, well, if you were so scared of him, he had a gun, why did you follow him? And it was different police officers at different times. Why did you follow him? You said you're scared of him. You followed him? And that didn't make any sense. And then the other thing was the girlfriend. This is your favorite part, the ghost girlfriend.
Yeah, the ghost girlfriend, and she will be testifying. But before we move on to her, I did make some notes about that. Were you afraid? Because what JT did was he said, "Were you afraid?" And when you followed, was that after the shooting? Yes, it was. Were you afraid? And he said, "Well, yeah, because I had just been shot at." Which still doesn't make sense. Well, why are you following the dude if you're afraid because you've just been shot at? So that on its face makes no sense. But you compare that with his preliminary hearing testimony from November of 2023, which Tacopina pulled out. Today on the stand, he was afraid because he'd just been shot at, he says. But in the prelim, nope, I wasn't afraid.
Right.
So
Not
that
afraid.
makes logical sense. Well, if you're not afraid, you would follow them. Even if your fear or lack of fear was irrational, because, hey, if the guy really did shoot at you, you're kind of weird if you're not a little afraid, right?
Right.
But the fact is, he can't keep a story straight.
Yeah, right. He can't keep the story straight. And then he went to then he got the lawyers. He said at one point, I think in the preliminary hearing, that he had went back to the scene to collect the shell casings. And we've talked about this because that was mentioned in the opening statements on the night of the shooting, right? But he didn't know the police had already gone there, and there had been videos of it, and pictures of them looking at them. There's nothing there. And then he said, he confirmed today, however, he didn't talk to a lawyer until like the next day. And the day after, and then he was told to go back to the scene. And then he flew apparently to New York, where he went to Metropolitan Hospital up there on the upper east side, Metropolitan Hospital. And I doubt there's going to be a doctor coming in and saying those things are bullet wounds.
Probably not. You could clear this up for me, because I'm not sure when he acquired various attorneys, as you mentioned, Ben Chu, Camille Vasquez currently, but I don't think that's who he spoke to initially, right?
Right. And the names don't mean anything to me, who he spoke to initially.
So he spoke to somebody.
Ben, but it wasn't, it wasn't Ben Chu, but it wasn't Ben Chu.
I thought it was a different person. So it became clear that this person he spoke to suggested, hey, if you think you got a shot at a civil case, you better get a criminal complaint filed. I mean, that was the clear message, even though Relly was all kind of mushy on it. And I don't know who said what or when, but JT was able to hit that a few times. And that's important. I mean, what's the motivation for filing the criminal complaint? Is it because you think a crime was committed? No, because I think it'll help my civil case.
Right, and
Right.
the civil case that he's put a whole nice theory out there that this was planned because he needed money. I mean, he needed money. He had a lifestyle that needed money. And then there was a really interesting thing, and maybe you can clear this up for me, because at some point he said, with cameras went off today because he was showing a picture on his Instagram account. And the judge just asked him, well, do you think if you show a picture on an Instagram account, you will be in danger? And he said, yes. He said, that's it. And everyone wanted, I mean, Judge Tacopina, I think, wanted to inquire, but because he said he was going to be fearful, the cameras went off. And whatever it was they were talking about, whatever the picture was, I have no idea. Because they did show other pictures later on of him flexing his fingers on his Instagram account. So I have no idea.
And they showed the pictures of him in front of fancy cars, and on redirect there was an attempt to clean that up. Doesn't mean you have those cars, doesn't mean you want those cars. Well, what the hell does it mean? You either have them or you want them. You're not just standing there in front of these cars just because they happen to be there and you're there. There's something going on inside to motivate that. And we know a lot of youngsters, and I say young, this guy's 36. A lot of younger people, love to do that kind of flashy type Instagram, Insta, and they'll post it because they think they look cool because they're with something. Well, down deep, it's because they want one.
Yeah.
So,
well, if I thought I looked cool next to a car, I'd be out there too. Yeah.
Why not? It's fun. It's just fun.
Fun, right? It's fun. I put two.
But there's a little. I wish I had one going on underneath. Right.
Yeah, on this one, this is clear. Now, Phoebe Purvis is the young lady, Joe's assistant, which she also be a lawyer. Well, there's two women at the table. One is Sarah Kaplan. She's the local counsel. That's
the blonde woman kind of facing us at the end of the table.
She's at the end of the table, and she used to work with Robert Shapiro initially in the O.J. Simpson case, and she was tangentially involved in Spectre for not as an attorney, but for something different. And then there's another woman who is doing a lot of the computer stuff, something that I usually end up doing when I've got attorneys with me, going up to the court bench with, I do not know whether she's a lawyer or not. The other male lawyer sitting at the table is definitely from Joe's office in New York. He's a criminal defense lawyer, and he's on their website, but I didn't see anybody else but three men on his website. But that doesn't mean he doesn't employ more, or that doesn't mean she's not a lawyer. Yeah,
she could be a baby attorney that also is a tech whiz, but having a tech person a la from Atlanta. What was his name? We had him on, Mr. Kokomo.
Oh, it was the Kokomo.
He was the tech whiz in in that case, and he was a non-attorney. Now we know he's going on to become an attorney.
Right.
So she could be an attorney. She could be a law clerk. She could be a paralegal. Clearly, somebody that has the tech skills that the other folks don't have.
Yeah. Well, that's. That's clear with a lot of us getting in trial.
Well, the thing is, it's so nice to have somebody else to do that.
Right.
Because the tech, it's like I can barely do this, with the different things we're doing. When you've got something a little more important on the line, like a client, it's nice to be able to have somebody do the tech stuff, and you can just ask to call this up, call that up. Because if you're a one-man band, I can tell you, I've done trials where I'm a one-man band. It's painful. You lose your thought process on a cross-examination or whatever it is. It's far more important than, can we get the right slide up, please?
Right. No, it was very difficult. So we did have that crescendo. Now, as you remember, the judge said that Mr. Tacopino, Joe, was not allowed to say the words extortion. And by the way, at one point today, because those texts all had the N word in it, usually ending with A. There was a ruling by the court, and everyone was saying in the courtroom. I thought I was like, "Whoa!" Remember we talked about
Joe
that.
said it in his opening.
He said in his opening, and all he ruled that no one in the courtroom could say it. They had to say the N word. So that was actually kind of refreshing a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I have, as a lover of words. That word we've talked about before. It's despicable, it's horrible, what it means, but it is just a word. And if it's being used in the context that Joe was using it, because it's important for his case, it doesn't bother me.
Yeah, I think he let him do it, but then it said, and that's enough now. Now we've.
Yes, he didn't overuse it. That's true. He did it once.
But so we had that, and then we had apparently, and I think Missy had posted it up when we were doing it, and I didn't see it, and I actually didn't hear about it. I know, right? At one point, but there was some tit for tat going on with Lewin and well, with Lewin and Joe. And what it was is apparently they got into a bit of a fight, and then Lewin said to Joe, "Why don't you take more steroids?" And then Joe said to Lewin, "Why don't you go visit Durst's house again?" And that's
Yeah.
because apparently, and there's a New Jersey article we put up there. There you go. Well, here's what happened. This was from Offie, who was in the courtroom. Lewin said the prop gun garbage. Tacopino leans over and shouts at the DA and points two fingers because they're sitting right next to each other.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. Very close.
Very close. And then actually Rocky, ASAP Rocky had to step in between them, and Lewin goes, "Time for more steroids," and Joe goes, "Go to the Durst house again." And that's because Durst was married to Deborah Charatan, if you recall, even though she was living with somebody else, and
It was an interesting relationship.
but it was a
let's just say.
relationship, and
Yeah.
she was covered by privilege. And her lawyer actually lived in my building here, right here where we are, for about 10 years when we were here. And he and I talked about him representing her at one point because we had to share the dog elevator going down with our dogs. But this is a while ago. This is when I got Valjean, actually, before Tubi. And so apparently most people didn't know this, but then Lewin took a vacation with his daughter at Robert Durst's wife's house.
Yeah, I think, well, the article I read was May of last summer, but was it before that time or was it just that recent?
No, I think it was that reason. I think it was
Wow.
that reason, but we still went. And so that's where Joe said, go to the, so there
Well,
they got into it.
Maybe that was some fees he was getting for some consulting work. Perhaps.
He's a PA. I don't know how he could get
I don't know what arrangements he's got. I have no idea.
I know. So that was apparently a site that we didn't see, and it wasn't on. There was no cameras rolling, and as you know, you can't photograph with your iPhone in a courtroom in California. There are rules against it, and you will go into the host gal. Your phone will be taken from you, and the photographs deleted, and maybe a contempt. But so that also was going on, and I have to answer this. Jenny says, "Linda, please tell me you live in the only murders in the building."
Oh gosh.
I don't. Those are on the Upper West Side. That building is up in the Upper West Side that they film or they use as the role model for the only murders in the building. I actually live in a more modern building than that. But I tell you, we do. We had a house up at the Catskills, and if you recall, about 3 years ago, there was a man who killed a New Jersey federal court judge. And he drove to the Catskills and like the next town, a couple towns over. And it was during the pandemic, I took everybody up and we actually filmed for Court TV where he had killed off himself. He had round and ate off himself in a couple towns over and all because he had summers in the Catskills. So my other house was close to a murder. And of course,
what is that starting to tell you?
I don't know. It told me it was like, I don't want to, like, I was like, I don't want to buy a house right in this block because, maybe it'll be haunted later on. I'm Italian. I believe in ghosts.
You never know.
Yeah.
Hey, let me look at, we got a few questions from earlier today that have been kind of maybe lost in the shuffle. Let me see if I can bring one on here. Oh, this is a good question. All the stuff he is reading and not showing the public goes back with a jury ? It depends. The short answer, it depends. If it's used to refresh recollection or somehow use it for foundational information, probably not. But if it's admitted as evidence, then in all likelihood, it'll go back with all the other evidence. So I don't know specifically which of those things we're talking about. There were text messages that were shown, a few other things that were used, some to refresh recollection. So generally, those would not go back.
Right. And we needed a lot of refreshing of the recollection.
Or just making it up, or
whatever. There was, it's funny because I had starred the Not Afraid to Follow as one of the big things for today. And then the injury.
Oh, the injury. Let's talk about that hospital visit.
Right. Well, because another number of things. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say he went on the 9th, which was because remember the injury, if it occurred that night, was on the 6th in the evening. So it was 2 days plus. Wasn't a full 3 days. 2 days plus before he comes back east and ultimately goes to the hospital to have it checked out. I don't know what people will think of that. It just seems that if it was significant enough, you get it looked at immediately. If it's something you're using to bolster a case, civil or criminal, maybe you forget to do it as quickly as you should, and maybe you're reminded that you ought to go have that checked out. It reminds me of, I've done a number of personal injury cases, and there's always that claim. And my brother-in-law is a chiropractor, so I'm not putting down chiropractors in general, but there was a certain system you could see develop after most personal injury cases, and that is the attorney would send them to a chiropractor who would immediately issue orders for 3 adjustments per week for 12 weeks or whatever it was. And why do they do that? Because then they take that number, and in the PI world, generally 3 times your medical expenses can be used as a measure of damages. Okay. So you send somebody to the chiro to churn up, medical bills, and then you multiply that and say, here's what we want. So when I saw this, 2-day plus delay in getting the hospital to look at his injuries, first thing I thought was, that's what you do when you're jacking up a claim. You're just trying to support it as best you can, whether you need the treatment or not.
And at one point, I did 4 stars. If I could read my writing, Joe got him to admit that at some point he said, well, the injury could have been from a bullet. It could have been from a bullet coming off a floor. Doesn't know what caused the injury, or it could have been from something else. So he made 4 different claims all over the time about what the injuries to the knuckles are. And I think we do have a picture of those knuckle injuries somewhere. I think what Joe was saying, that he smacked somebody. He had a picture of somebody's face, and he smacked somebody, right? And
there was was his name Illy? I know I'm probably missing.
Yeah.
Or Isaiah or something like that.
FNI, right. Yeah, and he smacked it, but you only took a picture of half the face. So it was all over, but it was all leading up to the crescendo. Yeah, and I think that's why things got testy. There's the knuckles now.
And do we know what day that was? Was that the one at the hospital?
Well, here's an interesting question, because when Joe showed him the picture, that's why I took a screenshot of it. He says, it's not date stamped. I don't know when this is from. Okay. And Joe said, well, didn't you take this photograph? He said, well, but I don't know when it's from because it's not date stamped. And they went round and round in that. Okay. That's why I screenshotted it when it happened, because that was the answer. So the same question you're asking me, I don't know, because he didn't know.
He doesn't know. And then he says, they're talking about the first 2 knuckles and then the third one having maybe just a slight mark of some sort. And he's asking, can you see the injuries on that photo? And Relly was like, well, I can't see them that well, and maybe because of the screen or the quality of the photo. But he said, you can still see them on my knuckles now, 3 years later. Oh, I want to see that. That's what I want to see. If you've got 3-year-old scarring from, I think that supports your case. Why aren't we seeing that?
Yeah, I know. I know, exactly. Right, because that would be something pretty bad that went through. Although, I've got scarring from when I was a kid still. My dog bites.
Yeah, let's start sharing our scars again.
Share our scars again. So I think as things got to the crescendo, because Lewin wasn't able to play the game he's normally play. And he tried really hard this afternoon with the objection, the objection, and the judge told him to sit down. And so Joe was heading towards the crescendo. And normally he tries to stop that. I think normally he has his way in the courtroom, and he didn't have his way. And it came in. I'm certainly Joe would have liked it to come in more like, and you try to extort, right? I mean, that's why the judge said you couldn't use those words. But it came in. $30 million? $30 million? Anyone who tries a case knows you got to be, for $30 million, you better be dead.
Yeah, that's some serious pain and suffering or disability that goes on and on and on. But maybe those punitive damages. Obviously, firing a gun at somebody is an intentional act, and that's punitive damages normally. So who knows? I mean, it's a rubber number, but the fact that he asked for it ahead of time and as part of a lawsuit to reinforce that request, it just don't look good.
Right. The first one was ahead of time, and the second one was like, and if you pay it through the lawsuit, you can funnel it through the lawsuit. That's basically was the intent. Okay, you funnel it through the law, and they'll never find. That's not paid. Not just settle the case. they'll never find me again, right? They'll never find me. The prosecution won't be able to find me because I'm going to be at an island, and they're going to have to go through Rocky, and they'll never find me if you pay me that money. That's I think that's the coup de grace. That's what I think.
Yeah.
It's because it's one thing to say settle the case with $30 million that you owe me. It's another thing to say,
But I'll go away,
"Hey,
and
I'm
yeah.
going to go away." You know, and that sounds like extortion. It's either bribery or extortion.
This guy was squirming, no doubt about it. And when he said, "I just want this to be over," I think he meant it. That was one of the truest things I think I heard him say. And I think it will be. There'll be a touch more of this redirect. Trying to, as I call it, clean up on aisle 5. It is quite a mess that he's left behind. And then Joe will have another shot at recross to do a little something and leave one more impression with this jury.
Yeah, although Paulie P is seems very honest. Just do this, do that. I mean, he brings it down a notch. He seems extremely honest. I mean, if they get anything on this, it's because of him, not because of John Lewin, in my opinion. Just because he seemed like he was just putting it out there, putting what he had, trying to let the jury find the truth. And here it is. And here, but the problem is that you got a lot of problems here. You got a lot of problems. So what do you think the girlfriend's going to say? She's got to testify, right?
Well, I guess it depends on what they say to one another this weekend. She's got to testify. And thanks to Miss Shorty from Down Under for shouting us out there. She's shared some of our stuff in the past, which we really appreciate. So I think there may be another, get together to kind of talk about the story and what to expect. And we still have that one piece of video that it's kind of damning, because it's the video that Arelli says shows him at the scene at or about the time he found the bullet casings, right? And you can't see her. So I guess, was she in the car? Was she hiding around the corner? I mean, how are they going to handle that? They got to come up with something. And I'm counting on them coming up with something.
Yeah. He said, I think she may be off to the side. That's what he said. Maybe she's off. There's cameras everywhere.
And it's not a tight shot. It's not like she can be like where you are and I'm right here and you're cut out. No, it's a wide shot. So they'll come up with something.
Jenny is a good thing. It's not me. They lied. It's fake. I don't know if that's my girlfriend. That was another thing. He said on one of the things, one of the videos, I don't know if it's me. I think it may be AI.
Well, it's not the first time he's not sure who he is on video. That's happened at least twice now, that he's just not sure who it is. And I'll give him some credit. The quality is horrible. But still, in that area, in that context, you would know. You would know if it's you or not.
Tina points out, and he missed this too, I think the judge asked so many questions during the cross. He felt that he was doing the cross. And yes, there was one period of time. But I think what it was is the judge, by the way, had this he kind of had this affect. He was clear control, but really wasn't answering Joe's questions. And he didn't want to waste time with him not answering. So he said, look at me. He's trying to ask you this. And now the next question is this. And the next question is this. And the next question is this. And he went through like 7 of them. And he said, then Mr. Tacopino, you can continue. And I think really got the message that he had to answer the questions. That's what happened.
And quite often they were yes or no questions. But yes or no is not an answer that Relly likes to give. I've used my watch analogy. What time is it? Well, you got these parts over here on the side, and then click onto this. He's off. He's off and running. Even after sometimes he stops, right, as if he's answered the question, and then he just starts talking again, and the judge will have to say, "There's no question. There's no question pending. Just sit." And it gets back to what I said yesterday. That this is not their comfortable place, right?
Right.
For anybody, but folks who are kind of in a culture that freedom of expression and being a little outrageous is rewarded. This is really confining, and it's tough for them to do it. And I don't blame them. I get it.
Missy, could you put Relly's Instagram up in the chat? Let's see. Relly, here was Relly's Instagram, and the most amazing thing, that's his Instagram, and it's Relly Boss. I don't know what there that he was fearful of. I mean, he's on TV. He's bringing a claim. He's asking for $30 million, right? But that's his Instagram. He wants all these followers.
Stuff? Is that what it is?
Yeah,
That's what it
I
sounds
don't know.
like.
I don't know what it is, but he wants that's his fault. He wants all these followers, and why he was fearful that if his Instagram went up, he would be it would not be good. It'd be bad for his safety. It's a public page. It's anyone can go to it. Hey, look, you just Google it. Rally. You know, you go to Instagram, put on rally. Up it comes. You know,
Well,
so
you're not a record producer because you would have shunned him
well,
if you are.
yeah, I don't know. The judge does kind of look like Geppetto, doesn't he? He does a little. At one point, he was off the bench there too, looking at the screen. He really has no problem controlling his courtroom. I really like him, actually.
I think he's doing
that'll hold.
as well as he can with the big personalities involved, and it's primarily Lewin because Joe can be boisterous and a big personality too, but he seems to know when to dial it down and act appropriately. Lewin doesn't. He just has no idea how not to talk. It's not that difficult. Objection, irrelevant. That's it. You're done. He just can't stop. He just has a narrative form. That's just how he talks.
Yeah. And he was speaking constantly. He was constantly doing speaking objections constantly. Now, the judge kept saying, as we played that clip, he told him to sit down. Basically, it was like your papa saying, "Sit down and shut up."
Yes, I'm waiting for him to.
I was waiting for that.
Wrap him across the knuckles with a ruler.
But he and then he got warned, and then he just wouldn't stop. He just couldn't control himself because he wasn't winning. Now Miss Love would have gotten away with all that with Judge Glanville. Yes, Jenny. Miss Love would have gotten away with all that. There's no doubt about that.
Judge Arnold is no Judge Glanville. I think that's safe to say.
No, and I think he's really doing a good job.
Yeah, I think you got a tough witness. You have 1.5 tough attorneys, and I'm giving Joe a bit of a break here because I think he knows he's winning. So it's easier when you're winning to be a little more low key. Lewin knows he's losing. So he's going over the top. Right.
He's definitely going over the top, and he's not used to. I don't think he's used to having this happen in a high-profile case. Clearly, I think they would have been better with Paulie P. The whole thing. Paulie P. It looks like he's. I'm going to say it again, earnest, and he's trying to do the right thing. And you could say it's earnest, but you still got to deal with the fact that really deleted texts. Really's girlfriend's not there. The shell casings were not there when the police came. He didn't go to the hospital until after he hired attorneys. And he says today he says he's not permanently injured, but in the lawsuit he says he is permanently injured.
And we know, a lot of those lawsuits, because especially state actions, they aren't verified as a federal complaint. Federal complaint is verified, which means you are attesting to every fact as if it's a perjury is hanging over your head. Right. State law, most of the cases, you talk in fluffier language, and you always have some permanent disfigurement. A lot of it is puffery to help you, get a little more money in the case. I also mentioned in California, you don't normally mention the amount of the claim. Unless you're trying to strong arm somebody.
Unless you're trying to strong arm, that's the issue. Now, the question to have, though, is if this come out, he looks like he really is a liar. And I don't, what does the prosecution do? We already know that they decided they chose their warrior, right? They chose Relly to be on Relly's side, not on ASAP Rocky's side. But you have two very good attorneys, very ethical attorneys with Ben Shue and Camille Vasquez who've chosen Relly now, and they know that tape is out there with the 30 million.
So, I know. I find that very interesting. Yeah. And if there is no conviction here, that is going to be one tough mother of a civil case. I'll tell you that.
Oh yeah. It's going to be fought. At that point, maybe it hasn't happened that really had to go to doctors and all. Maybe the civil case has stayed a little bit pending criminal action and all. But that's not going to. It may end up being that there be some minuscule settlement just to let it go away. And minuscule for ASAP Rocky could be $300,000, but there was no way he was paying. No way he was paying that 30 million because what could happen then? He could get arrested because he was trying to buy a witness, right? What would the prosecution do if he did pay it or paid any money to settle that case? They'd say, you're trying to buy a witness. You're tampering with evidence. You're tampering with a witness. You're going to jail. We're indicting you.
Yeah. So be glad you weren't successful.
Yeah.
So and before we talk a little bit about Karen Reed, just remind folks what this jury was left with. Did you make the demand for money before or after the shooting? After the shooting. Okay. Thank you very much. Damn it. I wish you hadn't said that. That's what they get to go home and think about. Okay, Karen Reed. So we know that was kind of fun today. And I now have in my hot little hand. Wait, hold on a second. I think I have. I hold on. Don't move. I think I got something for you here. Stand by just a second. All right. The hearing was just today. And remember, Bev, among other things, was going to take into to her little chambers there the determination of whether to have
Judge Bev.
What's that, Judge Bev?
Judge Bev to you.
I tried to use her last name when I was in the courtroom or courthouse yesterday to get to her court, and I mispronounced it, which is why I'm sticking with Judge Bev. Anyway, she wasn't sure whether she needed a what hearing?
Dahlberg.
On the issue of
Dahlberg
Mr. Green,
Lanigan, right. Dahlberg
Mr. Green and his opinions on the deletion or lack thereof of the Haas Long in the snow, those searches that were done on the phone attributed to Jen McCabe, who says she didn't do it and didn't delete them at 2 a.m., that it happened at 6 after they found the body. That's the crux of his testimony.
Now I owe you a Carvel ice cream cone.
That's right, because we talked about it earlier. You said for sure she'd want this hearing. I said, I don't think so. So she has ruled not going to have a hearing, which means next week will be very short. I'm not sure it's worth going up for next week. We'll figure it out. So she will.
It'll be Friday now instead of
yes.
Friday, I think, right, instead of Thursday.
It's
actually Dahlberg. We've had this discussion with Michael. I appeared on a panel with it early
here
on.
We go.
The plaintiff, and he's on. His attorney's on there saying everyone mispronounced it because everyone was saying Dahlberg. It's Dahlberg.
I think I was the only one saying it like that, but.
No. For years, people were saying everyone had a.
Well, I think that's like
now people are more saying. Now people are more saying Dahlberg.
En français, I would have to go to France and see how they pronounce it by somebody who spells it the same, like Michael here, Michel in en français. So it could be a regional thing. Anyway,
Michel is here. Hey Siri, call Michael Bryant.
Calling Michelle Bryant.
Mais oui, très magnifique. Okay, so she decided she doesn't need that, but she is going to still make a decision on whether he's in or not. So the decision that there is no hearing needed is not a decision that he stays. Now, to me, logic says she let him in before. She doesn't think there needs to be an evidentiary hearing again. I think he's coming in. That's, you want to double down on that bet?
No, I know because I'm concerned because she said, I think I can decide this without having a hearing. That was her thing today. She said, I would let you know by Monday, but then decided she should have said, let him come in. So I'm concerned that she's going to strike parts of his testimony.
Okay. Well, I don't know if I'll give you half credit for that. It's either all in or all out. If she does strike some of it, that's a tie.
That's a tie. Okay. All right. Then we'll just go have an ice cream together. That's all.
There you go. Okay. So we have the schedule here. This is pretty close to what I had scribbled down and we talked about earlier today. So the next matter is on the 5th. They still list both the 5th and 6th here, but we think that's going to be pared down to just one of those 2 days, probably Friday. Then the filing for the motion to dismiss, if there is going to be one by the defense, that deadline is the 11th. Valentine's Day is the deadline for the Commonwealth to file their opposition to any motion to dismiss, if there is one. And then on the 18th is the hearing on the motion to dismiss, if there is one. And on the 21st, it is the filing of all other evidentiary motions. It's not a court date. It's just that's the deadline to file this stuff because we're going April 1st. And then the hearing of those, if there are any, 2 days set aside at the moment, 4th and 5th of March. That could change. 1 day may be enough. And then the 7th would be a pretrial hearing for whatever is left and motions in limine. So there you have it, heading all towards steamrolling toward the April 1st deadline. That came out just today.
A really stupid question.
You don't have any of those, but go ahead.
Why are we doing this if there is the head top court which hasn't decided the issue of whether or not there's going to be double?
Well, there's no stay. There's no stay in place. Do you think they'll ask for a stay if the court doesn't rule?
No, it sounds like the defense wants to go forward.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I think so too. I think they've resigned themselves to the timing of those jury affidavits and the way that all got so sloppy and messy. They probably just think the appellate court is not going to disrupt this second trial date and everything that's been going on to prepare for that. Because what would they do? What would be another remedy? To have the jurors come in, have the lower court reconvene some sort of investigation, some sort of evidentiary hearing on the jurors?
That
and
should have
what
been the
they-
remedy to begin with. They should have been brought in to begin with.
if they'd done it right away. But now
away. No,
every day
no.
that passes makes it just sloppy. So I have a feeling that all the parties have said, look, that's a snowball in hell. It ain't going to happen. Let's just go forward. Be nice if they did rule before, because then it's not that big matzo ball hanging out there. Just get it done, deny it, go on with the second trial, and there you go.
Well, you saw her today, and one of the questions I think I asked you earlier is how did she look? Did she look worried? Did her team look worried?
Oh no, you didn't mean that. She didn't. She looked like she's having a great time. Like she was at a receiving line at a wedding or something. Yeah, she looks like I got nothing to bother me. And I mentioned it to you earlier. If you had won, as she did, in my opinion, as she won, her team won, they spanked the prosecution. You got to be emboldened by that, because nothing that has happened since, even their desperate attempts to get rid of Dr. Russell, Mr. Green, is he a doctor? No, he's an engineer of some sort.
No,
Their attempts to get rid of those key players, unsuccessful at this point, just look like they're desperate, and that's got to make her feel even better.
What's the thing about the ARCA, the ARCCA?
She was going to hold off on that.
I forgot to put the R in when I tweeted about it today. But ARCCA,
that's a good question. She decided to put that off, and I have a feeling that's going to be rechurned through next week. And that's remember the federal experts who determined in their investigation that the car never hit John O'Keefe. That was their ultimate conclusion. Well, that's great stuff for the defense. And so, of course, the prosecution wants that out. And I think they're trying to get it out based on some notice issues. I think that's the Rule 14 that they're kind of hanging their hat on. I think that's a loser too. But those kinds of
they only had a case where they testified already.
That's what makes it even more bizarre. If they hadn't testified, who knows? Anything could happen. But for the judge to have allowed them and their reports, and then now all of a sudden say, I kind of screwed that up. They're out. What are the chances? I just don't see it.
I don't understand it. When do you think, when do you think, this is a great question from Michelle Duffy, the SJC, the Supreme Court, the top court, I'm going to call it the Supreme Court, the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts, is going to have a ruling, Michael?
Who knows? I would think it's either going to be like a pocket veto, meaning they just ignore it, just don't do anything, or they'll do it at some point in the next 2 months. How do we know? Something's going on internally. It's not like they don't know what's happening as this case ramps up. And I think Judge Bev also knows that it's going to happen. So let's just get this thing going. We got our April Fool's Day trial date. Let's just go. Let's just do it. So
and then
a lot of unsaid is what I think is going on. It's just like people aren't telling the whole story because they kind of know the whole story.
You know what I would like to know? I'd like to know if the defense, because they had the contact with the jurors, talked to them about what was important and what they think they should do in the second trial, and whether the defense is really, those jurors really become like jury consultants to the defense, just like in this case you have a formal jury consultant in the California case.
I haven't looked at it lately, but I think Turtle Boy interviewed a couple of the jurors. And I don't remember if they were alts or if they were actually in the box, but I recall there was something out there about him. I didn't ask him about it today. We didn't have a lot of time, but maybe next time I go up there, he's a regular celebrity up there. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, you interviewed him a little bit. You got
just briefly.
He wanted to know where you were from.
Well, I always say
okay.
Michael Bryant with Justice Served TV, and that's when people have a glazed look. And so sometimes they'll say formerly Law and Crime, formerly Court TV, and no, all right. And then some folks called up our site while we were there because I said, well, we're streaming it too. And then they're like, oh, there you are. Like, yeah, that's me.
Thanks to Missy and Dizzy. And Missy today really,
exactly.
We're holding it down. But no, he was good. He said he felt good. He sits in the jury box when he's
he's in the cadre of Karen Reed supporters.
Karen Reed, okay, all right. Yeah. So he gets a seat in the jury box, and then you interviewed somebody else. My favorite interview of the day. Yeah,
it wasn't as much an interview as it was a a shout out to LKB about how he loves you so much, and that was Mr. Jackson. And it was kind of weird when they left. I caught them as they were coming down. It was he and his client, Karen Reed, and they walk by shoulder to shoulder, and I do that little exchange where tell Linda I love her. Just tell her I love her. I said, you love her? Okay. And then as they got down to the corner, it was like they were misdirected, and they had to walk back again in front of the courthouse and go the other direction. It was just kind of kind of weird, like they made their grand departure, and then they had to come back.
I'm sorry. I'm still caught on the fact that you're confused and maybe somebody could love me.
No, I just thought it was an odd. I thought it was an odd on the street kind of greeting, because I was just saying, hey, my co-host is Linda Kenny Bod, and you know her. It's, oh, I love Linda. Tell Linda I love her. So, okay. Got it.
As you all know, for people who don't know, Alan Jackson and I were on opposite sides of the first Phil Spector case. And so we spent like almost 6 months in a courtroom together separately. And I think we had a great respect for each other. He's an excellent attorney. For some reason, I don't know, all these cases we're doing, I seem to have ties to people.
I know. Good
jury,
for you.
The jury consultant the jury consultant in the ASAP Rocky case, and then tried a case against Alan Jackson, and Alex Spiro's out there. I mean, it's like, and I'm here. You see what's important to me? I'm here with you and the podcast.
No, you make it sound like that's a consolation prize.
No. I just said what's important to me is doing this, because I think that if we don't talk to people for what we know and what we learn, and there's so much misinformation out there, if you and I don't do something like this, Michael Bryan, and take over,
there are definitely less avenues for it. There really are.
There are, yeah, but it's important, and you see the questions, and everybody, hopefully everybody appreciates it, except for the one woman who wrote to me and just hated me. She,
the one that thinks you were drinking, or something.
No, that was the other guy.
That was somebody else.
Yeah, you remember she wrote to me, and I had said something about Luigi, but it was really complimentary. It was bad about the Mayor Adams. It looks like he's going to be pardoned, by the way, by the president.
Like it, yeah, or
right?
Just, charges,
and the charges being dropped or whatever. And so, and then I said, you absolutely misconstruing everything that I've said, blah blah blah. And then she said, I knew you were a phony with your glamour shots, and I'm thinking, my glamour shots. I'm exhausted every day. I'm on the air with you. It's like I have makeup. I hardly have glamour shots.
A bitter woman. Okay, I got to run, but I want one more question before we get out of here.
Alan Jackson, by the way, was Rocky's attorney, Jenny, at the start of the case. You're absolutely right. Okay.
Injurious personalities. That frightens me, but okay. Did you know Sacco and Vanzetti were tried in that courtroom? That's that tiny courtroom I've been complaining about. Somebody told me that today from the steps of that courthouse, because they've become historians, and docents for this place they hang out at a lot. And I thought it was an interesting little tidbit. So yes, I didn't know it until today. So now I know it.
Remember, we talked about Sacco and Vanzetti on this show with one of the situations that people thought they were guilty, right? And it turns out that at least one of them was probably innocent.
Which one?
I forget whether Sacco or Vanzetti.